That morning I thought everything would be the same as usual. My husband had left for a business trip and things were normal. But somehow there was something I didn't know. Everything was about to change. There was a strange sense of unease inside me, a feeling of anticipation. It was something I had never felt before. That morning I thought everything would be ordinary, but in a way my greatest secret was hidden in that morning while I sipped my coffee. My husband left early in the morning. "Safe travels," I said. As always, I made the morning coffee and then went outside into the garden. Walking deeper into the garden, something felt different. This place, it had always been my sanctuary, but this time it was pulling me somewhere else. Everything was familiar, yet something was either missing or too much. At that moment, I found myself in the depths of the farm among the horses. But I wasn't alone. I knew he was there. The stableman, the one who had taken care of the farm for years. The man who knew the horses and the surroundings like no other. And yet his eyes always told me a different story. He was always calm, composed, and yet somehow distant. But today it was different. His gaze was no longer distant. It was something more. As the stableman gently brushed the horses, I watched them from the corner. His posture, the worn leather gloves, every movement had always given me peace. But there was something today that was pulling me in. For the first time I felt more aware of his presence. I had never considered it before, but today, I found myself drawn to him. The calm, graceful way he handled the horses was suddenly appealing in a way I couldn't explain. That day, everything seemed to slow down in the farm. The sun was beginning to set as he approached me. He put down the bucket of feed and slowly came over to me. His eyes had something new, something different. He paused for a moment and asked, "Are you okay?" Felt like a clue. I didn't know what to say, but something within me was stirring. I replied, "Yes, I'm fine," but the rest of me was far from fine. There was an unease, a question in the air. It was like something was building between us and I couldn't stop it. At that moment, time seemed to stretch. Each step I took toward him felt like a step I couldn't turn back from. I was conscious of the intimacy growing between us, yet unsure if I was ready for it. But there was no turning back. I knew it was only a matter of time before everything would shift. Every day the time I spent on the farm grew longer. I would often be alone there, the quiet only broken by the soft sounds of the horses. And every time I saw him it felt like there was something new, something deeper. He wasn't just the stableman anymore. He was something else entirely. There were moments when our eyes met and everything else faded away. Our conversations became shorter, our interactions more intimate, and the boundaries began to blur. One day it felt like the moment had arrived. My husband was away again and once more it was just the stableman and me in the fields. The world felt like it had stopped and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to cross a line I could never come back from. He approached me slowly, his eyes fixed on mine, and this time there was no hesitation. The silence between us spoke volumes and I could feel my heartbeat quicken. It was as if the universe had conspired to bring us to this exact moment. Our proximity was unbearable and I couldn't resist the pull any longer. My mind raced with questions, doubts, but my body was already answering them. Every fiber of my being was telling me to step closer, to give in. The forbidden nature of this relationship made it more thrilling, more dangerous. But also I felt more alive than ever. As the days passed, our meetings grew more frequent. It was as if I was living a double life. The more I saw him, the harder it became to leave. There was an intoxicating pull, a magnetic attraction that I couldn't explain. Every glance, every touch, every shared silence felt like it was unraveling me, piece by piece. It was as though he was the only one who could truly understand me, and I felt a sense of freedom I had never known before. But with that freedom came a price. I knew this was wrong. I knew I was betraying everything I had ever known. Yet I couldn't stop. Every time he touched me, even if it was just brushing against me by accident, it sent shockwaves through my body. My thoughts were tangled, my emotions a mess. I knew my husband would never suspect anything, but this secret was slowly consuming me. I was no longer the woman I had been. I was someone new, someone I didn't fully recognize. One day as we stood together near the stables, his hand brushed mine again, and I felt a fire ignite between us. It was no longer about the horses or the farm. It was about us. I didn't know where it would go, but I knew I couldn't deny what was happening. The lines between right and wrong had long been blurred. There came a point when I couldn't keep living this double life. The lies, the secret meetings, the stolen moments. It was all beginning to catch up with me. I felt the weight of the choices I had made and the guilt began to consume me. What had started as a simple attraction had turned into something deeper, something I wasn't sure I could escape. I had no answers for myself, let alone anyone else. All I knew was that this affair, this forbidden love, had changed me. It had given me a sense of power and freedom, but it had also left me hollow, unsure of who I was anymore. I didn't know how to end it or if I should. But one thing was clear. My life would never be the same.